Hello, Syngap.Land. My name is Michael Graglia. Today is Friday, October 18th, and this is episode 151 of Syngap.10, the Syngap.One podcast. I want to start by saying that on October 1st, we released an update to the Syngap Census, where we announced that we know about 1,497 patients worldwide. That's what we know about. There are more patients who are diagnosed that have not made themselves known to the fund, and there are many more patients who have not been diagnosed. But if you go to Syngap.Fund/census, which is our short link for the census, you will find just a growing trend line, and that tells us that there's more and more patients showing up in more and more countries. So it's great. It's great. We're finding lots of patients. So the therapies that we're working on right now have a lot of mouths and bodies to go into, and that's important work. We got to activate. We got to find those patients. We got to support those patients. We got to activate those patients. Next thing I want to tell you is that it's October, folks, and we're in fundraising season, full on. I want to thank Brett and Sydney, who did their fundraiser through UFD Tech, raising over $50,000. I want to thank Julie Miles, who did the Scramble for Syngap again, who raised over almost $30,000, and I want to thank Nancy Lieb Kessler, who is doing the CLG4, the Karen Lieb Gala tonight in New Jersey. And that is just an exceptional gala that Nancy has done now for 4 years. And I remember when Nancy called me and said she wanted to do it. And, we're always like, how much does it cost? What are we going to make? And I just said, look, first one, just break even, just figure out how to do this. And let's go from there. And it was all about celebrating the life of Karen. If you've been sleeping under a rock in Syngap.Land, Karen, if you see the poster behind me, is the oldest known Syngapian that we have. She is, I should know this, 68 now, and I think. And I'll never forget when she was diagnosed, and Nancy called me and told me her story, and I said, "Wow, the oldest known Syngapian. You don't realize what a big deal this is for all these people raising little kids to remember and realize that they're going to grow up into senior citizens." And I said, "Can we make a movie about her?" And that was the beginning of Nancy's engagement with the fund. She spent a lot of time on the board of trustees. She just stepped down, but she continues to raise money. And CLG4 tonight, I think, will be the best yet. We cannot thank Nancy Kessler enough. In addition to Nancy's effort tonight, and if you're anywhere near Jersey and you've already got plans, cancel them. You got to go to the gala. You got to meet the community. It's exceptional. We have some great speakers. Dr. Jillian McKee from CHOP is speaking. Anyway, in addition to that, we are doing the Coast to Coast Challenge. So our board chair, Suzanne Jones, has created this, and she's saying, coast to coast, we need to all raise funds. It's one of these peer-to-peers. You can go. You can set up a page for your loved one. You can reach out to community. You got to tell them it's time to support the Syngap Research Fund. How many times is too much to ask? No answer. Keep asking. Ask them every week. Hit them up again and again. It is giving season. People make donations at the end of the year. You have to remind them that there is an organization out there that is run largely by volunteers that channels as much cash as possible to clinical and medical translational research to improve the futures of our loved ones. There is no better cause. Hit them up. So the Coast to Coast Challenge is a way to do that. Syngap.Fund/C2C. Right to date, we have raised $42,000. I know that number's going up because Lauren just made me download some checks. In addition to that, there's a Missense account for the fund, which is dedicated fundraising for Missense research. That's at $23,000. Charmander, well done. It's shot up to over $10,000. Emmy's a little over $8,000. So there's some dedicated fundraisers there. If I'm missing a dedicated fundraiser, please tell me and I'll make sure I add them to the shout outs. Online shoppings. There's a lot of ways to raise money for SRF. Someone set up an eBay shop for us, which is awesome. So if you sell on eBay or you have something you need to get rid of, go to our shop, sell it on eBay, and donate the proceeds to us. Always a win. Also, we've set up an Amazon shop. This is different than Amazon Smile, which is a dead program where we got some very small slice of the pie. We have set up a shop on Amazon with things that we think parents need, and if you buy from that shop, we get something. It's also just a resource for parents. So if you have something you buy all the time for your Syngapian and it's not on our Amazon shop, please let us know. Email just info@curesyngap1.org and we'll add it to the shop. The link's in the show notes. I want to talk about the FRAZIER study, people. Tom Frazier, we gave him a grant to do this eye tracking thing. We got some great papers out of that. We gave him another grant to really double click on Syngap. So we found a world-class researcher. He's really established in the autism field. He's the chief scientific officer of one of the largest autism organizations in the country. He's working on this eye tracking thing. Why eye tracking? Because our kids can't speak, right? Because our kids can't speak. So how do you test them? It's really hard. But with this eye tracking thing, Tom has created all these images that you can put on a screen, and just by the computer looking at the eyes of the Syngapian can score them and can figure out what they focus on and what they don't. And then with that very precise machine score from this very simple showing a video to a kid, we can then mark improved progress. We want Tom Frazier's tool to be calibrated for Syngapians. That's why we raised money. That's why we funded him. But now we have to take part of all the studies you've done for SRF, or maybe you've never done one. This is the easiest. So start with this. Email khubba, KHUBA, at jcu.edu and sign up today. That's that simple. Katie, I got a Syngapian. I want to sign up. She'll send you a consent. You sign it. She'll send you an email. It says, open this, watch this video, put your screen in front of your kid, make the kid watch the video. You're done. That's it. You do it again in 3 months and 6 months, but it's so simple. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to spit in anything. You don't have to give blood. You just have to look at a screen for 15 minutes. Who's Syngapian looks at a screen for a lot more than 15 minutes every day? Everybody. Sign up for this, people. We're at 40 who've signed up, 25 who've completed. I need 100 who have signed up and 100 who've completed. Every single Syngap family. If you're a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or a sibling, ask the primary caregiver, have you done the FRAZIER study yet? This has to happen, folks. Super important. We got to get Tom all the data we can. Speaking of studies, the other thing that we are blessed to have is the program at CHOP. We just recorded a webinar yesterday, which we will release soon, talking about all the incredible work at CHOP. But the punchline is, in addition to the retrospective natural history study that we've done with Citizen and is published and we keep recruiting for, we are doing a prospective, a forward-looking natural history study with CHOP. That program is 1 year old. As a testament to how activated and impressive this community is, let me give you some numbers. 86 patients have visited, new patients have been to CHOP because of this study. There are 10 more new patients scheduled. 19 patients have already come back for a second visit. 4 patients have already come back for a third visit. In addition to that, there are 22 follow-up visits also scheduled. Each of those visits generates a mountain of data and opportunities for EEG data, blood data, all the things, so CHOP can better understand Syngap. CHOP is one of the very best pediatric neurology institutions in America. There's Harvard, there's Stanford, there's Colorado, there's a few others, there's good ones, but CHOP is one of the one in that league, right? So the fact that we have this large donor who's funding program at CHOP that we can send people to is a huge opportunity. By the way, it's also clinical care, right? So once you've been to CHOP, Dr. Jillian McKee is your doctor. And if your doctor happens to be someone, wherever you are, and they're like, I don't understand this thing about Syngap, or, what doctors love to say is, I'm seeing a lot of sparks, but no fire, code 4. I have no idea what your EEG says, but I'm not sure it's a seizure. You're like, hey, can I put you in touch with Dr. McKee? Because she's seen like 100 Syngapians and she knows, right? This is an opportunity for you to improve care for your Syngapian. Now, if you're over here on the West Coast, good news. Because of the generosity of our donors, we have established a clinic at Colorado and we are talking to Stanford. And so Colorado and Stanford are working together with CHOP. So the data flows freely because of a lot of work and investment by SRF, but that's a separate conversation. So CHOP is one. Congratulations to CHOP. You can go to CHOP, you can go to Colorado, you can go to Stanford. Get yourself and your Syngapian in there to ensure they get the best quality care and to ensure that we get the best data. Why do we want this data? Because we need a rigorous natural history study to show industry and to show the FDA so that when it's time to test these therapies, we can credibly say we understand Syngap, this is what Syngap looked like, and this is what better looks like. And when we show a drug making people better, because we know what better looks like, guess what? We have a trial. So guys, it's time to just go back to basics. Do the FRAZIER study, sign up for CHOP, raise some money. This is how it's done. Let's talk about school and behavior. There's a great article that someone flagged to me because it said Syngap.Fund. Well, they flagged it to Jackie, who flagged it to me, where Elle, aka Mickey Sanderson up in Wyoming, advocated for her kid again. Good job, Elle. I'll share that article in the show notes. It's about an AAC device. It really exceptional advocacy by this parent. And I just want to note that advocacy is a critical part of being a Syngap parent. It's like so many parts of being a Syngap parent, changing diapers maybe. You hate it. You never thought you'd have to do it, but guess what? You're doing it. So get in on the game. Let me just lay this out for you. Maybe you've got a 2, 3, 4-year-old and everything's fine and the school says they're cute and you feel loved and supported. You're like, this isn't so bad. It's going to get bad. It's going to get bad. The kids get bigger. The kids get more complicated. The school districts fail. I've seen it time and time again. Maybe they fail when they're 5. Maybe they fail when they're 9. Maybe they fail when they're 15, but they will fail. right? So why? Because our kids are incredibly complicated and the school districts have limited resources and there's a lot of special needs kids. There's a lot of special needs kids and our kids are some of the hardest. So eventually the schools drop the ball. So if you are in a public school system and you do not know who the best special needs advocate in your city is, and they are not on your payroll, call them, become a client, whatever it costs, get them to come to your IEPs and have them start tracking right now. Why? First of all, they're cheaper than lawyers. Second of all, when you need a lawyer, they're going to know the best lawyer. Third of all, because of their work, your IEPs will have the requests in them that will hold the school districts to account. We all have to be advocates for our kids. And why do I bring this up right now? Why do I always bring this up? Because my inbox is full of kids who went to school and came back with a rug burn on their back and no one knows why. We got another kid who's been literally just walking around the playground playing with rocks and the school's not doing anything. And then I got another special needs parent, not one of ours, but a good friend who called me, and there was some kids very similar to ours, and something bad happened at school and it was on video. And even the police said to this mom, you need to hire a lawyer. This is unacceptable, right? Our kids get failed at scale. And then it is up to us to not say, well, let's work on it. Let's make things better. Let's be agreeable, nice people, apologize for our kids. The school district has an obligation to give our kids world-class, the best education possible. And if they are incapable of that, they are responsible to fund that education elsewhere. And the way we get that funding is we hold them to account, and with our own advocacy, with other advocates, and with lawyers. And in addition to that, I will say there have been a few cases where our own dream team, Jackie, Nancy, others, have helped families do this fight. Yep, there's Nancy Kessler again. A sibling of a Syngapian, Karen's sister with the movie, the lady driving CLG4, and the lady who has jumped in on a couple of advocacy cases and also manages or pays attention to another case that is very troubling to me. So just Nancy Kessler just rocks. I mean, I just did the bullets for this podcast, but as I reviewed them this morning, I was like, wow. Nancy just is tireless in her generosity to this community. So speaking of Nancy, again, unplanned. Let's talk about some really important articles on the site. We've started an article series on siblings, and there's Nancy again, right? I'm gonna title this episode "Nancy Lieb Kessler Rocks," and so we want to start profiling the siblings. Why do we want to start profiling the siblings? Because those of us with a neurotypical kid and a Syngap kid are all. We spend so much energy on our Syngap kid, and we're all really worried about our neurotypical kid because of the burden, because of the stress, because of how much attention that they don't get from us. And so I think celebrating the siblings and connecting them by telling their stories on our website is a really powerful thing to do, and it makes perfect sense that we've started with Nancy. In addition to that, there's a very troubling, unfortunately, article on our website, Syngap.Fund/bones, where one of our patients, Michael, who's north of 40, I think, had a drop seizure. And if you don't know this, bad news, many of our kids progress to drop seizures. If your kid is not dropping yet, sometimes it happens around 18, sometimes later, but Syngapians for some reason progress to drops. By the way, this is why we're giving research. This is why we gave our first grant to Dr. Juliette Knowles, because she's looking at epileptogenesis, how seizures progress. And I don't have time to explain that to you, but hopefully there'll be a paper on it soon. And so Michael had a drop seizure. Guess what? Michael's had seizures his whole life, and he's been treated for them his whole life. And guess what? Some of the drugs Michael takes, much like many of our kids, affect bone health, which no one had really stopped to think about except our kids are on these drugs for life, right? And so Michael had a drop seizure, big man, 40 years old, drops, weak bones because of AEDs, anti-epileptic drugs, big break in the leg. Really unpleasant pictures in the blog, but pictures that I'm glad the family is willing to share, because we don't want more of those pictures, right? We don't. So in addition to the story of Michael's bone break, we had our clinical director, Dr. Marta Tahir, do a lit review. Just looked at the existing scientific literature, medical literature, and said, here's what we know about anti-seizure meds and bone density and bone loss, right? So I want you to read the Michael article, and then I want you to read the Marta article. I want you to print it out and take it to your doctor and say, hey, is my kid on any drug that has this side effect? And if yes, maybe it's worth it. Maybe that drug is stopping seizures. Maybe there's no other drugs. There's a lot of other drugs. So anyway, have that discussion with your doctor. But if your kid is on these drugs or has been on these drugs for a long time, ask for a bone scan, right? Pay attention to bone density now. And if there's ways to improve or ameliorate the bone loss, let's do it, because our kids are going to have drops. And we don't want more of these horrible situations that Michael's been through. Now, the trouble with getting off some drugs and getting onto other drugs is the second and third generation drugs tend to be quite expensive. Example, Epidiolex, which many of our kids benefit from. So congratulations to Sara Driscoll for having the good fight with insurance about, I don't remember if it was Epidiolex or Omfi. They're both very expensive. And they work well together, and many of our kids are on both. But many insurance companies would prefer that our kids just took first-gen drugs that depleted bone density. Anyway, so there's this great article about Sara's fight with insurance, and I think you should read it just to be motivated to have your own fights and compare notes there. In addition to that, and this is the Nancy Lieb Kessler Rocks artist episode, but it's also the Fondo Syngap Rocks episode, because as usual, Vicky and her team, especially Merlina, are just overachieving. So Vicky, in addition to being a director of SRF and fighting for the Hispanic community with Syngap, has seen the bigger problem of the Hispanic community in rare disease and created an organization called the Society for Hispanic Rare Diseases, which in Spanish, the acronym is SHER. And they just announced their full board, and appropriately, Vicky is on there with Deborah Requens from Penn and Dr. Andres Jimenez. So incredible board, incredible organization. And it just gives Vicky another platform from which to advocate. And as a Syngap parent, that raises the profile of Syngap. Thank you, Vicky. She also has some cool pictures from a meeting she went to in Colombia. Same story. She's out there, she's going to meetings, she's talking about Syngap, she's talking about our work. And these meetings are important because that's where doctors stop and think and talk and put Syngap on their radar. And even if you look at the pictures, you're like, wow, it looks like they're having fun. These meetings are a ton of work, guys. You're on all day, you're talking, you're networking, you're connecting the dots, you're telling our story, you're advocating for Syngap, and someone is at home taking care of your kids. You had to get on a plane, you're looking at your phone, you're making sure nothing's going wrong. So every time one of our families goes to one of these meetings on behalf of SRF, I am grateful. And I just want to thank Vicky and Merlina, of course, for doing Cafe Syngap Uno, Syngap.Fund/cafe. If you speak Spanish or know anyone who does, these are incredible episodes. We're up to episode 20. Great work, Merlina. Great work. At the rate you're going compared to the rate I'm going, there's going to be more Cafe Syngap Uno than Syngap 10, which is fine. Conference. Finishing strong, guys. The conference is in 47 days. The conference is in 47 days. It is our annual event. It's when we come together. It is when we get scientific updates. It's when we have a great family meeting. We have the family dinner. We learn a lot. If you haven't signed up, there's still time. Sign up. The agendas are on the website. They're exceptional. And please book a room at our hotel. This meeting is in downtown LA. We really don't want you staying across the street or staying around the corner or Airbnb-ing. It's too many logistics. We want everybody in the same building. If we thought we got a really good room rate from this hotel. If you think the room rate is cost prohibitive, let us know. We'll see if we can help. But I want everybody to stay in the hotel. I want everybody to be together. It's a beautiful hotel. It's going to be a beautiful conference. 47 days away in Los Angeles, December 5th and 6th. Please come. Oh, more great news. Well, some great news and some sad news. The great news. You've heard me talk about Longboard Pharmaceutical. Longboard has a drug called bexicaserin, which is really good for seizures because it inhibits 5-HTC B2, whatever. It's one of the 5-HT drugs. And in a real visionary and leadership move that I've only seen once or twice before, they, instead of doing the usual, which is our drug treats Dravet and LGS, because that's what everyone does, because it's easy and it's a well-trodden path, they're doing a basket trial for all developmental and epileptic encephalopathies, aka DEEs. And this basket trial for DEEs includes Syngap for a change, right? So we're going to recruit like crazy for that trial, and it's a really potent drug, so we're hoping we get some good results. But the news is Longboard has been acquired by Lundbeck, which is, I believe, a Danish pharmaceutical company for like $2-something billion. A lot of money. And this is a big deal because Longboard is a one-hit wonder. They've got bexicaserin, that's it. And so Lundbeck, by acquiring them, is sending a clear message. Hey, there's money to be made in DEEs, and we should invest more in DEEs, which is what Lundbeck just did. So really exciting. Congratulations to the team at Longboard. We have a few friends over there. We really like those folks. And congratulations to Lundbeck for this leading move. And we're looking forward to seeing a higher powered, better funded than it already was going to be trial coming out of Longboard so that we can show that drug works, if it does, which we hope it does, and get another option to our parents who are struggling with how to stop these horrific seizures. That's the good news from industry. Here's the bad news from industry. There's a company called Skysona, which just announced, I think it was in the New England Journal of Medicine, results from a gene therapy study. It was gene therapy for some terrible neurodegenerative disease that I cannot pronounce. I won't even try. But here's the punchline. In this gene therapy for this degenerative neurological disease, 7 children developed blood cancer. Now, it was a degenerative disease, which means the kids would ultimately pass. And the reason that this gene therapy caused blood cancer was a promoter. Now, if you remember me talking about Joe Anderson in the past, we gave Joe Anderson a grant to do hematopoietic stem cell replacement, which is basically bone marrow transplant, make the bones, make Syngap. Voila, we've cured Syngap.1. He's done this in mice and shown that therapy does improve Syngap expression in mice. There's a paper, I'll share it in the show notes. What we learned, though, after we funded this and after the work was done, unfortunately, was the promoter in this therapy. The promoter, I've explained before, is like the chef in the kitchen. It's the thing that makes all the different genetic machinery work together. The promoter, the MNDU3 promoter, has this cancer issue. And after we awarded Joe the work, and after Joe had done the work, the FDA actually slapped a black box warning, which is a bad warning. It's like, are you sure you want to take this? On the drug, on any drug with this promoter, saying, hey, we think this causes cancer. What's really troubling about the SkySonar news is the number of kids who got cancer relative to the population. But I share this because I want to underscore 2 things. First of all, I get an email every other week from someone with the Joe Anderson paper being like, hey, are we going after this? This looks really promising. And I'm like, no, it's on hold. We're not touching it with the current promoter until someone else takes this approach with a different promoter. We are not going forward with this. And I know that another rare disease group is currently funding work at another institution to explore that. So we're going to wait for their results, which we should hear pretty soon, I hope. And then we're going to see if we want to prosecute that for Syngap.1. But with this promoter, it is highly problematic. So that's message 1. Message 2, these therapies are complicated and have pitfalls. And that's why our strategy has always been engage as many industry partners as possible and have as many shots on goal as possible with small molecules, with ASOs, with gene therapies. So you hear me bouncing around, hey, small molecule, hey, ASO, hey, gene therapy, Mike, focus. No, I don't want to focus. Because some of these things are going to have problems that we can't imagine yet, and some of them aren't. And one of them is going to work, and then another one, and then another one. And that's good because our kids are very heterogeneous, right? So we need to have an array of options that make sense, at different ages and stages and whatever. So, terrible news for those families on the SkySonar treatment, and we are doing our best to make sure that there's never news like that for Syngap, but wanted to share that news because it was pertinent to a grant we've already given. Let's talk about scientific progress. There are 300, if you go to PubMed and you Google Syngap or you search for Syngap.1, you will find since 1998 when Dr. Huganier published the first paper on identifying this gene, saying, hey, this looks like it's helpful in the brain. And that was the course of events, right? Huganier said, hey, this is a brain gene. That was 1998. 2009, Michaud says, hey, I found a lot of patients with typos in this gene and they all look the same. Maybe this is a developmental disease. And then, hey, Ingrid Scheffer and team a couple years later says, actually, it's not just a neurodevelopmental disease. It's actually an epileptic encephalopathy because all these people have seizures. And that led to the 2019 first natural history study, and the rest is history. So speaking of, why do I go like this with my hand going up? Because if you look at the number of publications per year, this year, there are 45. And that is the most we've ever seen in any year. By the way, it's only October 18th, right? So we still have, do your math, Mike, 2.5 months of publications coming. We're going to be well north of 45. We're going to be probably north of 50 by the end of this year if things are coming as fast as I think they are. So that's incredibly exciting. Papers don't cure kids, but they're pretty important for getting industry engaged and for demonstrating progress and answering important questions that might be hanging up therapeutic development. So big numbers, 303 papers on Syngap.1 since 1998, 45 of those year to date here in 2024. And some of those papers are pretty exciting. So Beta and Silverman most recently have done mouse papers. I'm not going to try to explain them. Beta did something about hyperactivity in another neuronal cell type. Silverman did a bunch of EEGs to mice and compared them to iPSCs, I think. Both exciting. Why do we care so much about mice? Because everyone does it in mice first. So the more we understand about mice and Syngap, the better. Thank you, Dr. Beta. Thank you, Dr. Silverman. In addition to that, we have a paper from Dr. van der Hagen. I'm sorry if I just didn't pronounce that correctly, but this is exciting. And I'm going to use the visual abstract from his paper for the cover of this episode, because what it shows is that mice neurons develop like this. And Syngap neurons develop over time like this in humans. And humans develop over time like this. What does that mean? That means we need our neurons to develop slowly so that everything happens in time. And that's why we're smarter than mice, right? The trouble is Syngap neurons, when you have a Syngap patient with only one copy of Syngap, that curve looks much closer to the mouse, right? So actually the problem in our kids is not that they don't have enough neurons. The problem is that these neurons develop too fast because there's not enough Syngap balancing the pie. So what Dr. V, I'm going to call him Dr. V, figured out is that Syngap's over here, but Syngap dances with this other gene called SRGAP2. And SRGAP2 and Syngap keep each other in balance. So when you have a haploinsufficient Syngapian, a patient with only half as much Syngap, and they don't have enough, then things go too fast, right? But he said, well, what if we knock down some of the SRGAP2? And there's different flavors, there's A and B and whatever. And he shows in his paper that actually when instead of fixing Syngap, if you just take out the SRGAP2, that neuronal development starts to look much closer to normal. A beautiful visual abstract, very simple and accessible and conceptually accessible, I would say, but exciting insight because knocking out a little bit of another gene is a whole other therapeutic approach. And who knows who's working on that. There's also a medRxiv, which is more of the clinical literature, an article out of the incredible CHOP team looking at potential EEG biomarkers, which is very exciting news. So a lot there, guys. A lot going on in the research. There's a ton of work at SRF. Please sign up. Please volunteer. Zoe is a great volunteer coordinator. We can find some work for you, believe me. And everybody, please fundraise. Syngap.Fund/FR. We need to raise more money. We need to fund more research. You hear about the big donors, the people writing big checks, doing this, that, and the other thing, but the small donors, the small efforts just from families, $3,000 here, $10,000 there, those numbers really add up and allow us to fund research that grows and grows, and the knock-on effects happen for years. I won't spell it out now. In addition to that, it is fundraising season for the federal government. We are a member of the CFC, the Combined Federal Campaign. Number is 33321. If you are a federal employee or in the military, thank you for your service. Please support SRF through the CFC 33321. All right, social media, last ask. We're all over social media just like everybody else. At Cure Syngap1, wherever you go. Please join us, support us, follow us, like us, amplify our content, share it. Use our social media to educate your teachers, your friends, your family, your parents, everybody about Syngap1. We're doing the work for you. We're pushing the messages out. Just share it, amplify it. YouTube, 1,200 followers. LinkedIn, 3,800 followers plus. Twitter, almost 12,000 followers. Insta, 47. TikTok, 400. I don't even know who's on TikTok. Anyway, let's get all those numbers up, guys. Tell your friends. Have them share SRF. Have them watch our content. Have them learn about our kids. Let's build the community around our kids. If you're newly diagnosed and you've somehow gotten through this episode, congratulations and thank you. Syngap.Fund/resources. We are here for you. We want to help you. Let us know. And of course, please like and subscribe to this podcast. All right. All of that in only 27 minutes. Nancy Lieb-Kessler, thank you for your leadership and for showing us what a sibling can do in their life, for the fundraiser tonight, for your advocacy, for being an amazing sibling and taking such great care of Karen. This fund is so grateful for you. And I just want to end on the volunteer note. Like, Nancy's service to this community has helped so many Syngapians. And I think we should all just reflect on that and say, I want to be like Nancy. Because that's what SRF is. It is a chance for us to all share our energy, share our gifts, and benefit all our kids at scale over time. Thank you all for being here.